The future of Indian football is hanging in balance as the sports governing body FIFA has suspended the All India Football Federation, that is AIFF, citing undue influence from third parties. The ban meant that India lost the hosting rights of the prestigious Under-17 FIFA Women's World Cup, which is scheduled to kick off in October and has also been barred from participating in FIFA and AFC tournaments. Hopes were shattered, but efforts are underway to undo the harm. But how did the whole thing begin? This story involves the Delhi High Court, the Supreme Court, the government, and a sport that is now fighting for its survival on the world platform. Now, this entire thing began with an election. Former Civil Aviation Minister Praful Patel was elected as the AIFF president along with the executive committee for a third term in December 2016. But Advocate Rahul Mehra approached the Delhi High Court against this election, saying that they were held contrary to the National Sports Code. Patel was elected in 2009, won re-elections in 2012 and 2016, and went on to become a FIFA Council member as well. Now, the Delhi High Court in October 2017 set aside Patel's election and directed that the elections be conducted afresh. It also appointed former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi to conduct the elections. This newly elected body was to then carry out the requisite changes to the AIFF constitution to bring it in conformity with the National Sports Code. AIFF, of course, challenged this order in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court stayed the High Court decision in 2017 again in November, allowing Patel to continue in his role. But the Supreme Court then appointed another committee of administrators with Qureshi and former Indian captain and international football player Bhaskar Ganguly to formulate a new constitution of the federation, which again should conform to the National Sports Code and the model guidelines. AIFF had then told the court that the presently elected body would cooperate with the committee of administrators to formulate the new constitution. However, citing this pending case and the whole litigation, Patel, whose third term in office ended in December 2020, remained in office. He extended his term and refused to hold elections till the issue of a new constitution was settled by the Supreme Court. He had completed 3 terms, which is the maximum allowed under the National Sports Code, in December 2020, like I mentioned. Then on 18th May this year, the Supreme Court finally took charge and noted that the executive committee has continued to look after the federation despite the fact that its term expired in December 2020. It said that, and I quote, "This state of affairs is not in the interests of the proper governance of the federation," unquote. So it reconstituted the committee of administrators. I'll refer to it as COA for the remaining of the video. It reconstituted the COA to include former Supreme Court Judge Justice A.R. Dave, former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi, and Bhaskar Ganguly again. Through this order, the top court had forced Patel and his executive committee to step down. Then in July this year, this COA finally sent its final draft constitution of the AIFF to the FIFA and to the Supreme Court. But FIFA had objections. It suggested that it wants the AIFF to have 25% eminent player representation in its executive committee as nominated members instead of 50% as stipulated in the draft constitution by the COA. So just to clarify, the COA wanted the federation's electoral college to include 24 male and 12 female former international level footballers, that is 36 in total, along with representatives of the existing state associations. Electoral college basically means the voters who would come together to choose and elect the executive committee. So it wanted these voters to include these former players, but FIFA wanted them to be a part of the executive committee instead as nominated members and not be a part of this electoral college. But despite FIFA's objection, the Supreme Court on 3rd August approved the electoral college suggested by the COA with representatives from 36 state associations and 36 eminent football players. The court also accepted the time schedule suggested by the COA and asserted that the election should be held expeditiously. 2 days after this order, merely 2 days after this order, FIFA had warned AIFF for possible suspension and loss of rights to host the upcoming FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup. FIFA then suspended the AIFF on 16th August for, like I mentioned, undue influence from third parties, which it said, and I quote, constitutes a serious violation of the FIFA statutes, unquote. This is when the centre sprung into action. The Supreme Court last week asked the central government to take proactive steps with FIFA to ensure that India can get to host the Under-17 Women's World Cup and that the suspension is lifted. Finally, on Monday, the Supreme Court dissolved the committee of administrators that it had appointed and handed back the day-to-day management of the federation to AIFF. It said that it hopes that this will facilitate the revocation of the suspension of AIFF and the holding of the Under-17 World Cup. Now, how did this change suddenly come about? Of course, it wasn't sudden, because a day before this, on Sunday, the central government filed an application before the Supreme Court, and in this application, it informed the court of its discussions with FIFA and virtually accepted all the demands that FIFA had made. So, it basically urged the court that AIFF's day-to-day management should be looked after by its administration, that is AIFF administration, led by the acting Secretary General instead of the COA. This application also said that the FIFA ban, and I quote, is disastrous and serious for the entire nation and all football players and football lovers, as not only India would lose the hosting rights of such a historical event, but the Indian teams elected by AIFF and its affiliated club teams will no longer be entitled to take part in any international football matches or competitions forthwith till suspension continues. So just to let you know, the process of AIFF election is currently at the stage of filing nominations before the Supreme Court order and is being conducted by Returning Officer Umesh Sinha and Assistant Returning Officer Tapas Bhattacharya. So the Supreme Court has now made several changes. Here's a list. First, the Electoral College now will only comprise of representatives of AIFF member associations in states and union territories, and will not include eminent players. This is exactly what FIFA wanted, as I explained. Like I said, an Electoral College means the group of people who would elect and choose the executive committee. Second, the court accepted that the executive committee shall consist of 23 members, including 6 eminent players. So this is where the eminent players will come in. The other 17, apart from 6, including the president, the treasurer and the vice president, will be elected by the Electoral College. And out of the 6 eminent players, 4 will be men and 2 women. The eminent players will be nominated in the executive committee and not be elected, making their representation to be around 25% of the committee, as again suggested by FIFA. How will these eminent players be nominated? Now, according to the central government affidavit in the Supreme Court that was filed on Sunday, 2 separate lists of male and female eminent players will be made in descending order on the basis of the number of international matches they've played. Then from these 2 lists, top 4 men and top 2 women players will be nominated to the committee, but only 1 player can be selected from one state. So basically, for example, both the women players cannot be from the same state, even if they are top 2. They'll just move on to the third option along with the first option. Now, the court also postponed the elections to AIFF by 1 week from the earlier fixed date of 28th August. This was as per the schedule that COA had given to the Supreme Court. This was done, the delay was done so that there would be enough time to change the Electoral College and to have nominations filed afresh according to the new composition of the Executive Committee. Also, the day-to-day management of AIFF shall be managed by the AIFF administration led by its acting Secretary General. So, the COA basically won't be in charge of AIFF's affairs anymore at all. So that's where the entire process is right now. Most of FIFA's conditions have been accepted. So the ball is officially in FIFA's court now, and the entire nation is waiting with bated breath to see if the suspension actually gets revoked after these changes are put in place and implemented. This is Apurva Mandhani for ThePrint. For more such videos, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.